Good morning. My name is Nelson Mejia. I am the manager of the Owens Lake Dust Mitigation Program for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Thank you for inviting us to your Great Salt Lake Summit. It's an honor to be here. So with me also is
Jaime Valenzuela here. I'm the manager of Owens Lake Capital Development and Implementation. I've been around in the group for around 10 years, so I've seen a few things, and we're going to talk about those things today.
Owens Lake. Go ahead. So what we're going to share with you in the next 15 minutes is pretty much give you an idea of where Owens Lake is located. Why is the city of Los Angeles at Owens Lake? BACM, which stands for Best Available Control Measure. Share with you some of the aspects of our regulatory compliance, some of the challenges that we faced through the years and continue to face at Owens Lake. Some of the resource protection, protocols that we follow at Owens Lake, what we've been able to accomplish to date, and the future of Owens Lake. So Owens Lake is located approximately 210 miles north of Los Angeles. Owens Lake is a terminus lake at the Eastern Sierras. It's a salt lake. And through history, the lake elevation has changed. But it was at the 3,600 foot elevation that was agreed upon with between the city of Los Angeles and the Great Basin District that the city of Los Angeles will be responsible for controlling dust. Again, 3,600 elevation and below. Just to give you an idea of the scale, your Great Salt Lake is approximately 6-7 times larger than Owens Lake. So, hopefully, the story we're going to share with you today from Owens Lake can trigger, some actions on your part so you never find yourself in a similar situation that we're in. So why are we at Owens Lake? Well, it was in 1913 that the city of Los Angeles completed construction of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. Soon after construction of the aqueduct, the city diverted water from the Owens River into the aqueduct to bring it to the city of Los Angeles. Unfortunately, the Owens River was the main source of water for the lake, to replenish the lake. And, a few years after, diversion of the water, the lake was dry. And accounts, from newspapers from the early to mid 1900s, speak of extreme, dust events in the area. At some point, the EPA got involved, and mandated the city of Los Angeles to control dust at Owens Lake. So the main focus for us is controlling PM10. PM10 stands for particulate matter. Is particulate matter 10 microns in size or less. And just to give you an idea of the size, it's roughly 5 to 7 times the size of a human hair.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we control dust at Owens Lake through the use of best available control measures, which is a regulatory term, an approved dust control method. And I'll start off with the most water intensive method, known as shallow flood laterals or shallow flood ponds. And it is exactly that. We just take raw water from the Owens Valley, create a big bathtub by constructing parameter berms or roads and filling up that pond, and we get a nice level pond out there. We got creative a few years ago. We started using shallow flood sprinklers. However, there's some issues there because the satellite imagery that is used for compliance at times does not pick up the moist soil And although we know that moist soil is not emissive, it was not hitting the mark, so we have to over wet. I'm going to be talking about these methods from most water intensive to least water intensive. Again, with shallow flood laterals, the capital cost, the initial capital cost is about $26 million per square mile. And water use is about 3.1 acre feet per every acre of pond that we have out there to keep up with the evaporative demand. And there is habitat value, obviously. There's low maintenance with these ponds. The capital cost of sprinkler shallow flood is about $32 million per square mile. And that's because you have a lot of sprinkler heads out there that we need to install, a lot more piping, a lot more water filtration to avoid clogging of those sprinkler heads. Water use is about 2.6 acre feet per acre, which is, I would expect a lot more water savings, but because of that satellite imagery issue that I mentioned, you have to overwater. Habitat value, it doesn't have any habitat value. The birds get scared away with the sprinklers, and it is more maintenance for our guys out there. We have managed vegetation, which is similar in infrastructure to the sprinkler shallow flood, but we have to drain all of the salts out of the soil. We have to cleanse that out for months and months and months until we get to the right concentration, and it allows for native species to grow out there. We use a lot of salt grass. It's the most tolerant to salt. Another dust control method is brine with shallow flood backup. And it's backup because brine is considered a subsidiary of shallow flood. It happens through the accumulation of salts in the lowest gradient areas of shallow flood ponds. Because this is a salt lake, we identified this trend. And once the concentration gets high enough, you start to see crystallization of those salts, and red and orange colors, really beautiful due to the bacteria that's in there. Capital cost for managed veg, probably the highest, 36 million per square mile. It does use water initially at a very high rate, 2.6 acre feet per acre until establishment occurs. Habitat value, yes, there is habitat value, however, it's high maintenance. Brine has a capital cost of about $24 million. It's the initial shallow flood cost. But once the brine establishes and hardens, there's zero water use. It's pretty much set it and forget it. However, there is no habitat value except for if you introduce some fresh water on the shorelines, and it's very low maintenance. We have tillage, my favorite personally, which is pretty much plowing the earth. This is an ancient method which roughens the surface to increase friction and reduce wind speeds, which prevents dust emissions. Gravel, very similar. It's just a hardened surface of gravel, 2-inch diameter. We have about 2 inches in thickness over a geofabric. The cost of tillage is very inexpensive, $500,000 per square mile, roughly. However, there's no water use or habitat. Maintenance is required whenever we get a heavy rain and it melts our tillage, and we lose our performance based on the dimensions of that tillage. On gravel, unit cost is very high, $37 million per square mile, zero water use, no habitat value per our regulators, and maintenance is low unless we get a dust storm from an off-lake source, at which point we either have to clean up the soil using a sifter or we put more gravel. Some regulatory compliance, this is how our regulator measures. This is a couple of examples for managed vegetation. We have to maintain 37% cover using satellite imagery, using Pallades, and we ground truth that image in the field to establish these maps. For shallow flood, 75% cover, wetness coverage.
So through the years, we've faced numerous challenges at Owens Lake, starting with regulatory deadlines. These are pretty much court-mandated deadlines, and they're basically set in stone. So far, we've been able to complete all of our projects on time and have avoided, having to pay fines. Weather is one of the biggest challenges. In the winter, it's actually really cold. In the summer, it's really hot. Our staff, is well equipped, to perform their functions under those extreme weather conditions. Soils has always been one of the biggest challenges. Um, you know, Soils vary sometimes from acre to acre, and that's what makes difficult for us during the design of our projects in determining the best construction methods because of the soil's variability. Corrosion, this being a salt lake, corrosion is one of the biggest challenges as well. Our assets don't last as long as they do in other areas. Um, we are in the process of implementing an asset management program that will allow us to better manage, right, and address the condition of our assets. So, and the biggest challenge of all, which is wind. In some extreme cases, we've experienced wind speeds of up to 100 miles an hour. 60, 70 miles an hour, basically, is just an average speed for Owens Lake.
I'm going to talk a little bit about resource protection. So what are the resources that are out there? We're talking about habitat, birds, and that is all overseen under the jurisdiction of California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Anything we do out there, we need to get a permit from them, and they need to make sure that there is minimal impacts to habitat. Similar with public trust value, and public trust value is defined as the public's ability to continue to use the natural resources or the land out there as God intended. And so when the department does anything like gravel an area, then you're kind of reducing that public trust. And that is enforced by the primary landowner of the lake, California State Lands Commission. Lastly, there's archaeological and tribal cultural resources. And right now, we work very closely with the 5 tribes in the valley. There's a lot of tribal monitoring that occurs for all earth disturbing activities. We have various committees, cultural resource task force, to decide what to do with some of these avoidance areas whenever we encounter an artifact. We have to redesign our projects on the fly to go around some of these sites. And we even went as far as to establish a tribal engagement policy for the entire Owens Valley to be able to communicate with all 5 tribal nations. With regard to resource protection, a little further here on habitat, the HSM stands for Habitat Suitability Model. And what it is, it's a model that is able to quantify habitat value based on natural factors such as water extent. Here you see on the y-axis, water depth, salinity, seasonal water availability, the amount of vegetation, the amount of islands and shoreline. And based on those different resources, different types of birds or different bird guilds or groups of birds will like those types of resources. So you can start determining how much value there is for that specific bird guild. And so the model is very successful in quantifying what's good for these different guilds, again, by using the natural factors that are out there. We use that model to design all of our projects now, by the way. So what have we achieved to date? After 10 capital projects, starting since 2000, that's 21 years now, we've completed 48.6 square miles as of 2018. That was when we completed our phase 910 project. And the air regulator still has 4.8 square miles of contingency area that he can order within the regulatory shoreline, and if he's able to determine that an area is emissive and it contributes to exceedances at the shoreline. What have we achieved as far as dust emissions since we've started? Well, our air regulator, the Great Basin, had estimated in 1999 that there were about 52,539 tons per year of PM10 coming off the lake. That number was re-estimated in 2019 to be 355. That's a little over 99% reduction in PM10 emissions. The total cost to date has been estimated at about $2.4 billion, with 55% of that coming from capital initial expenses. O&M annually, we have over 100 people out there maintaining the lake. And then the water that is used at the lake is water that doesn't go down to LA and sold to customers. So we have to replace that water with purchases from other sources like the Northern Delta or the Colorado River, and we pay a premium for that water. Regulatory fees, we pay our regulators annual operating expenses, so we pay them to regulate us. And lastly, something that it's near and dear to us, we are a water company, so this is important, 59,000 acre feet per year. And roughly over the last 3 years, it's been about 58,000 acre feet since the completion of the last project. That's about 12% of the city's annual water demand. Currently, the city of Los Angeles uses about 500,000 acre feet per year. So it's a significant amount of water that is left at the lake to mitigate the environmental impacts of, we have decreased that number down by 17%. It was in 2013 and 14, we were about 73,000 acre feet annually. And so we've added dust controls, and thanks to the use of more water efficient methods, we've been able to reduce that number. Nelson?
And the future of Owens Lake. As I share some of the challenges that we face on a regular basis, we are focusing actually on extending the life of our existing infrastructure. Constantly finding ways of how to improve our operations and maintenance at Owens Lake. We have a squad within our section dedicated to searching or researching new technologies to see how is it that we can use water more efficiently at Owens Lake. At the same time, we are constantly looking for new dust control methods that are water efficient or even waterless. And, moving forward, every decision at Owens Lake is made basically not just by DWP. On the contrary, we're pretty involved with the community. We have a number of work groups focused on different objectives. We have a habitat working group. We have a group that focuses on dust control, obviously. Another group focuses on the protection of cultural resources. So every decision that is made at Owens Lake factors in all these components. And that pretty much brings us to the end of our presentation. Unfortunately, there'll be no opportunity for you to ask us questions. However, we're available. If there's any information, is there any area that we covered during our presentation that you may want to know more about, feel free to reach out to us. Here is our contact information, and I will definitely, respond to your questions.